A second literary quality of parables is realism. In the parables, there are no talking trees and flying dragons. No, they're about brides and stewards and oil and wheat and, just normal stuff, and Pharisees and tax collectors and just the normal stuff of life. Now, there is an element of strangeness. Do you remember that word from Dodd's definition? Because wheat does not literally produce 100-fold. That's a deliberate exaggeration. A really good harvest would be like 20 or 30 times. And so there's a weird thing, like you're listening to this parable, and some of it produced 100-fold, and you're going, what? 100-fold? So there's an element of strangeness. Or like with the prodigal son. He did what? He basically said to his father, you're better off to me dead? This is a wild story. But they're realistic. They're realistic. They deal with the common stuff of life. By the way, here's a line drawing from Rembrandt, a preparatory sketch for his famous work of art. Anybody know it? It's a parable. It's hanging in the Hermitage in St. Petersburg. I saw it last year. Yeah, the prodigal son. This is the father. You could hardly even get near the prodigal son. The crowd was so big. We were on a tour, and I'm telling you, the painting was maybe where that orange sign was, and that's about as close as you could get to it. This is a genius work of art. This is a preparatory sketch. The rhetoric of realism is that it disarms listeners. You know what I mean? We're just talking about yeast and sowers and brides. It's normal stuff of life. And we listen with shields lowered. Ask David, you with me? About a disarming parable. You with me, Nathan? Hey, there's this guy over here, and he had this one little ewe lamb, and David's listening. What if Nathan had come on and said, David, I need to talk to you about adultery? Can you disarm listeners? How can I do that? We won't have time for me to play here, but maybe I'll play it for the D-Min class, a parable that Haddon Robinson created called The Church of Christ in God Chicken Restaurant. That's the title. I heard him do it live in Portland, Oregon at a pastor's conference. I didn't know Haddon Robinson at the time, and he gave this story, and it's this detailed, it's a very interesting story, very quirky. There's an element of truth, of strangeness to it. And after a while, you figure out this didn't really happen. This is just a parable, but it takes a while to get there. It's about a church in the holiness movement, the Church of Christ in God. Its attendance was going down. They were kind of dying, and what do we do about it? And they noticed whenever they had potluck dinner, their numbers went up. They did it like once a quarter or so. So they thought, well, let's do it more often. And they started doing it. And the story goes along. They eventually become a chicken restaurant. And their numbers are great. And he uses that parable to warn people about compromise. And yeah, you have to adapt to your culture. And yeah, numbers are good. Just be careful. You might end up with a chicken restaurant. Okay, I caught Haddon Robinson after that session, that pastor session. He was in a hurry. He was going out the hall. I said, Dr. Robinson, hi, my name is Jeff Arthurs. I just wanted to ask you, why did you choose, why did you create a parable? He said, well, I had something to say to the pastors. I didn't think they'd receive it. They listen differently. Parables rouse imagination, right? It's sort of like the Thanksgiving chair. That's kind of a parable. It's comparing one thing to another in all circumstances, kind of a parable. And it's a great way to communicate. I mentioned to you earlier, I think the age is ripe for a renaissance of parable.